The serpent of Genesis 3. In Genesis 3, we have neither allegory, myth, legend, nor fable, but literal historical facts set forth and emphasized by the use of certain figures of speech. See Appendix 6. All the confusion of thought and conflicting exegesis have arisen by taking literally what is expressed by figures or from taking figuratively what is literal. A figure of speech is never used except for the purpose of calling attention to, emphasizing, and intensifying the reality of the literal sense and the truth of the historical facts, so that, while the words employed may not be so strictly true to the letter, they are all the more true to the truth conveyed by them and to the historical events connected with them. But for the figurative language of verses 14 and 15, no one would have thought of referring the third chapter of Genesis to a snake, no more than he does when reading the third chapter from the end of Revelation, chapter 22. Indeed, the explanation added there that the old serpent is the devil and Satan would immediately lead one to connect the word old with the earlier and former mention of the serpent in Genesis 3, and the fact that it was Satan himself who tempted the second man, the last Adam, would force the conclusion that no other than the personal Satan could have been the tempter of the first man, Adam. The Hebrew word rendered serpent in Genesis 3:1 is nakash, from the root nakash to shine. It means a shining one. Hence, in Chaldee, it means brass or copper because of its shining. Hence the word. Hence also the word nehushtan, a piece of brass, in 2 Kings 18:4. In the same way, seraph in Isaiah 6 verses 2 and 6 means a burning one, and because the serpents mentioned in Numbers 21 were burning in the poison of their bite, they were called seraphim or seraphs. But when the Lord said unto Moses, Make thee a fiery serpent, Numbers 21:8, he said, Make thee a seraph, and in obeying this command, we read in verse 9, Moses made a nakash of brass. Nakash is thus used as being interchangeable with seraph. Now, seraph is used of a serpent because of its bite was burning, and also used of a celestial or spirit being, a burning one. Why would not Nakash be used of a serpent because of its appearance? Because its appearance was shining, and also used of a celestial or spirit being, a shining one. Indeed, a reference to the structure of Genesis 3 on page 7 will show that the cherubim, which are similar celestial or spirit beings of the last verse, Genesis 3:24, require a similar spirit being to correspond with them in the first verse, for the structure of the whole chapter is a great introversion. The Nakash, or serpent, who beguiled Eve, 2 Corinthians 11:3, is spoken of as an angel of light in verse 14. Have we not in this a clear intimation that it was not a snake but a glorious shining being, apparently an angel to whom Eve paid such great deference, acknowledging him as the one who seemed to possess superior knowledge and who was evidently a being of superior, not of an inferior order. Moreover, in the description of Satan as the king of Tyre, it is distinctly implied that the latter being was of a supernatural order when he is called a cherub. Ezekiel 28:14 and 16, read from verses 11 through 19. His presence in Eden, the garden of Elohim, verse 13, is also clearly stated, as well as his being perfect in beauty, verse 12. His being perfect in his ways from the day he was created till iniquity was found in him, verse 15, and as being lifted up because of his beauty, verse 17. These all compelled the belief that Satan was the shining one, Nakash, in Genesis 3, and especially because the following words could be addressed to him. Thine heart was lifted up because of thy beauty. Thou hast corrupted thy wisdom by reason of thy brightness. I will cast thee to the ground. I will lay thee before kings that they may behold thee. Verse 17. Even supposing that these things were spoken to and of an exalted human being in later days in Ezekiel 28, still the king of Tyre is not compared to a being who was non-existent, and facts and circumstances which never happened are not introduced into comparison. There is more about the king of Tyre in Ezekiel 28:11 through 19 than was literally true of the prince of Tyre, verses 1 through 10. The words can be understood only of the mightiest and most exalted supernatural being that God ever created, and this for the purpose of showing how great would be his fall. The history must be true to make the prophecy of any weight. Again, the word rendered subtle in Genesis 3:1, see note, means wise in a good sense as well as in a bad sense. In Ezekiel 28:12, we have the good sense, thou sealest up the sum full of wisdom, and the bad sense in verse 17, thou hast corrupted thy wisdom, referring of course to his fall. So the word rendered subtle is rendered prudent in Proverbs 1:4, 8:12, 12:23, 14:8, and in a bad sense in Job 15:5, 1 Samuel 23:22, and Psalm 83:3. The word beast also in Genesis 3:1, che, denotes a living being, and it is as wrong to translate zoa, beasts, in Revelation 4 as it is to translate che, beast, in Genesis 3. Both mean living creature. Satan is thus spoken of as being more wise than any other living creature which Jehovah Elohim had made. Even if the word beast be retained, it does not say that either a serpent or Satan was a beast, but only that he was more wise than any other living being.